We're going to continue our series on selfless, not selfish, but selfless. Selfless is that attitude of self-giving and self-giving to other people. Selfish is self-serving and self-promoting. It's where we're wanting everything for ourselves, and we want to make a difference as people. We want to accomplish, and that's important that we do that, but many times when we want to accomplish and we want to make a difference, it's also with people noticing how good we are at making a difference, how good we are accomplishing. There was a radio personality, used to be on the radio, and she was good at encouraging people working through tough times, but she would finish every show by saying, remember, you are the most important person in the world. I know what she's trying to do is say, you're significant, you're important, don't let people tear you down, but to say you are the most important person in the world, there's a problem with that. The attitude is saying you are better than everybody else, so take care of yourself better than everybody else. It crosses the line from just doing the right thing, and don't tear yourself down or don't allow other people to tear you down, but you actually put yourself above, and in a sense, you put other people down. That's not how it should work. There's a phrase that has become very popular, and that is a goat. Anybody know what a goat means? Yeah, some of you definitely know. Goat, I thought a goat is this little furry animal that runs around. Maybe TikTok is really impressed upon this. GOAT stands for the greatest of all times. So the greatest of all times. I want to be the greatest of all times. Now we assign the GOAT, greatest of all times, to celebrities, to athletes, to musicians, and those people out there, maybe they're the greatest of all times in this particular area. But there's part of us that wants to be the GOAT. We want to be the greatest. We want to be the best. Not just good at, not just accomplished, but we want to be the best. But something's wrong with having the attitude of wanting to be a GOAT, to be the greatest of all times, to the attitude that Jesus taught about being a servant at all times. To be a follower of Jesus, you cannot be selfish, because you've got to be selfless as a follower of Jesus. Matthew 23:11, Jesus said, the greatest among you will be your what? Will be your servant. So the greatest, if you want to be the GOAT, if you want to be the greatest of all times, and he says you must be a servant. You must learn how to serve others. Obviously, we have to serve God, but understanding it's not something that you do, it is something that you are. So it's not just, okay, I need to go serve somebody today to put in my good deed for the day. It is just becomes a part of your character as a follower of Jesus. We care, we see needs, and we want to serve others. I appreciate a phrase that Craig Rochelle often says. He says, I'm a servant of the Most High God. When I serve others, I serve God. I love that phrase. So would you repeat it after me? I'm a servant of the Most High God. Are you? Okay, let's say it again. I'm a servant of the Most High God. And when I serve others, I serve God. And that's a true statement. It's true. I'm serving God, and how do I serve God? I serve God through others. There's just a few stories in the Bible. One is in the book of Acts, chapter 9, verse 36. There's one verse about a lady. It says this, in Joppa, which is Tel Aviv, in Joppa, there was a disciple named Tabitha. In Greek, her name is Dorcas. She was always doing good and helping the poor. That's a summary of her life. That's all of it. That's all we know about her. She's a person who loved Jesus. She's a person who served others. But what was she? She's known for always doing good and helping the poor. Now the rest of it continues on. It says actually she became very sick and she died. The people grieved greatly because how much they loved her. Peter came, prayed for her, brought her back to life, and she continued serving. So her story is pretty significant, but the description of her life is always doing good and helping the poor. Now if they were to describe your life, what would they do? He is always doing what? What would they fill in describing you? Always talking? Always what? Always scrolling? Always working? Always playing games? Always being negative? Always critical? Always encouraging? If they summarized your life, what would it say? You are always doing what? For Dorcas, she's always doing good. And how's that expressed? By helping the poor. It's Dorcas's life. Summarize it all together. It wasn't, she's fun, she's energetic, she's made a ton of money, she's accomplished all these roles. Man, she's always doing good, and she's always helping the poor. What a great thing to be said about her. That's what goes down. And that should be said about us, that follower of Jesus. We're always doing good, and we're helping the poor. We're helping the people in need. We look around, we see needs, we notice needs. We don't have an attitude of the goat that I'm better than everybody else, I don't need them. But you see the needs, and we're saying, hey, I'm going to stop, I'm going to help, I'm going to make a difference because I want to meet the need around me. So simple attribute, a follower of Jesus, but one that takes effort to always do good and help the poor. In Luke chapter 9 and Luke chapter 22, the followers of Jesus, his disciples, were arguing amongst themselves. They became an argument between them. Now, you put a whole bunch of guys together for a few years, they're going to have some disagreements, but it's noted that their argument amongst themselves was, who was the greatest amongst them? Who's the best? Who is the goat among Jesus' followers? Can you imagine these guys, these well-known, loved guys, but they had all kinds of varied backgrounds, and there would be some conflicts, but they were arguing amongst themselves. Can you see Peter saying, I'm better than all of you. I walked on water. Look what I've done. You guys haven't done anything like that. Or John saying, well, I'm the one that Jesus loves. He loves me better than everybody else. And then James and John were known as sons of thunder, so you know they're going to get into every good argument in a good way. But they were arguing about who was the greatest. What's harsh is, after following Jesus for 3 years, the second time we see them arguing about who was the greatest was the night of the last Passover of Jesus with his friends. The night that he's going to be arrested later that night. That he's going to be tried. He's going to give his life. He's going to die. And he told them all this was going to happen. And what do? They argue about who is the greatest amongst them. You look at over in John chapter 13. We see Jesus there with them. And it says, at Passover, Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Now, the setting is they've come together for this meal. It's a very important meal. It's a celebration, one of the most important festivals that they have. They come together, and Jesus says, you make sure all the preparations are made. So they make sure the food's there, everything's set up, except one custom. And that's washing feet. Now, that seems odd to us, but if you came to our house, the right thing would be, I would say, oh, come on in, let me take your coat, let me give you something to drink. That's just culturally what we would do. In that day, they would say, let me take your coat, let me get you something to drink, and let me wash your feet, because it's dry, it's hot, it's dirty, and they wore sandals all the time. And so it was just one of those things, a custom that you would come into house, they would wash your feet so you'd feel comfortable and relaxed and feel clean on your feet. And it was always the lowest person in the house's job to wash the feet. It was a servant's job. It was the one that down low who would get on his knees and wash the feet. And they came together. They're sitting around ready to eat their meal, and nobody is getting up and doing it. They all know this wasn't taken care of. This is an important festival, that the culture, the custom wasn't done, and they knew it. And Jesus looks around and sees their hearts. He knows what they're thinking. They all may be dressed really nice and looking good and smiling, but he knows what's going on in their hearts, and he sees dirty, stinky, smelly feet. And so here's Jesus, the Messiah, the greatest rabbi, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. The Messiah has come for each one of them, the Holy One. He gets up, he picks up the towel, and he begins washing their feet. Now, maybe you've been a part of a church ceremony where they wash feet, and that's good, it's emotional, but it hasn't come nearly close to what Jesus was doing. He was saying, I want to meet your most basic need. We can do a foot washing ceremony, but perhaps a better one would be actually look at each other and say, I want to meet the deep need in your heart. It wasn't just a ceremony ritual, but he's saying, I care about you. And here's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. What's he doing? He picks up a towel. And I think we need to help the poor, and we also need to carry a towel. That means you be ready to get on your knees and take care of some dirty, stinky, smelly feet around you. Now, what we do is a lot of times say, well, it's your problem. Why don't you take care of yourself? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you fix those issues? What got you into this mess to begin with? And we sit back on our proud seats saying, look what I've done, and you should have done the same thing. And that's the opposite of the attitude of Jesus, and opposite of the attitude that he's asked us to have, one of caring and giving. A follower of Jesus should always be doing good. They should help the poor, and they should also be willing to carry a towel. Well, the main verse I want to look at today is in Matthew 25. Jesus teaches. And he teaches the people, and then he uses a story, and I believe it is a true story of what's going to happen, because he lays it out, and it talks about when he returns for each one of us. In Matthew 25, Jesus says, when the Son of Man comes, that's the Messiah, that's Jesus. When this Messiah comes back for us, in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him. And he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Now, that's a story that we lose a little bit in translation in our Western culture, in our American minds. So he's talking about people. He's saying they're all going to come together, and when his judgment day comes, he's going to separate sheep from goats. And I just think, okay, the sheep and the goat, and we know the difference between those two, but it's not exactly what we think. Let me show you a picture. Now, you see this cute little guy? Come on, work with me a little bit, children. What is this? This is a... What? It's a goat. It's not a sheep. No, it's not a sheep. This is a long-haired goat. Angora. So in fact, we had one of these. We used to do this Christmas program, and we needed some sheep, and the sheep came. They were scrawny and didn't look very good. So we had the long-haired goat fill in the scene where the sheep was, and nobody knew the difference. And you guys didn't know it this morning. So a sheep and a goat are hard to tell the difference. Let me show you another picture. This is a herd of sheep and goat all mixed together. Now, we were just in Israel a few weeks ago and driving down the road. You see this whole herd of sheep, but it's actually sheep and goats. They're all mixed. And again, our mind is sheep are these white fluffy things, and goats are the scrawny, ugly things on the side. But actually, in many parts of the world, they just kind of all blend together. You know, the real way to tell the difference between them, when you can't tell the difference, is the goat tail sticks up, the sheep tail hangs down. You've always wanted to know that, haven't you? Now you know, you can be an authority on it. But the thing he's saying is, in this culture where there's sheep and goats, and from a distance they all mix together, you can't tell the difference. He was saying, you're not going to be judged by your looks. You're not going to be judged by outside circumstances. People are going to go, oh, you're good, you're bad, you're bad. Jesus said, that's not how you're going to be divided. It's not how good you look. Some of us are well-groomed. Some have accomplished. Some of you have all the exterior stuff that you walk in. Wow, they look at them. They're important. Jesus said that doesn't matter at all when it comes to the day of judgment. Your exterior looks doesn't matter. Something else does. He continues on, verse 34. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. Now, this is interesting. This is Jesus, the Messiah, the king, saying that he was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and looked after me. And Jesus says, I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Now that would be confusing, isn't it? Because these are followers. Then the righteous, the sheep, will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, and are needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And they're thoroughly confused and saying, Jesus, we never saw you like this. You're saying we did this, but we never did this. And the king will reply in verse 40, the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. So he lays it out pretty strong. Because these were followers who were serving others. These were followers who were giving drink to the people who needed it. They were caring for the poor. They were seeing people who were lonely. They were seeing people who were ostracized. They were seeing people who were in prison. It doesn't say the reason they were in prison, He says there's people who were kept over here. There were people that were strangers. And he's saying, the way you cared for them is the way you cared for me. So he's commending his followers by saying, look at your hearts. Look what you've done. You've been compassionate. You've reached out to people. You served. And he said, the same way you did for one of the least of these, brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me. And then he turns to the others, the goats. It's interesting. I think I don't think Jesus had TikTok in mind when he said this, but still, the people who think, I'm the greatest, I'm the best, he turns to them and he says a condemnation over them because he says, all these things happen. I was hungry, you didn't give me anything. I was thirsty, you didn't give me anything to drink. I was a stranger, you didn't welcome me in. He says, all these things that were here, and you never did any of those things for me. And of course, their response, verse 44, they will also answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? What's haunting about this passage is how they responded. We'll go back to verse 44, would you? Don't have 44. Okay, verse 44 says, they will also answer. There he is. They will answer. What do they say? What's the word here? So the people on this side, they're going, but Lord. They're saying, Jesus. That means almost implies that they're Christians. They're people that wear the name of Jesus. They're people who are honoring God. They think in their lives. They're saying, oh Lord, oh Jesus, oh we know you. When did we ever see you like this? So these are not just some of these horrible, bad people over here that hate Jesus all the time. These are people that wear the name of Christian. And they're saying, oh, Jesus, wait a minute. When did we ever see you like this? So they're people that are saying they are Christians, but their heart doesn't look like it. And then in verse 45, he says, he will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. So when you saw the people in need and you didn't do that, said that shows you don't really love me. Then 46, then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. That's a harsh teaching. It's a harsh teaching of Jesus when he lays out very strong that the way you treat others, the way you meet the needs of others, the way you see others is the way you see Jesus. And he says it very strongly because a servant is a matter of the heart. It's not a matter of what you do, but it's a matter of a heart that's transformed. Now, truth is, we have all been goats. We're all selfish. We're that nature of looking out for ourselves. We're that nature of climbing ahead and getting ahead and pushing other people out of the way. We want to be the most popular. We want to be among people. We want the boss to see us, to notice us, and so we will push ourselves forward. We do that with our kids, with our family. We want our friends to get ahead. And so we have that nature within us, which there's a part of it that is saying accomplish and do your best, but then it's wrong when we push ahead of others and pushing them down and knocking them down and saying our family is better than everybody else. That goes against the character of Jesus and a follower of Jesus. Your friends are those that you welcome. The friends are those that you want to be around. Sometimes it's the people that we want to be friends with. We want to be their friend. Because if I can be her friend at work, then that'll get me ahead. If I can be their friend at school, then that gets me ahead. And so we push. We want to welcome those people. Those are the people that we smile, the people that we notice, the people that we compliment, the people that we will hug and embrace. And then there are those other people. Those other people that we don't really want to be around them. In fact, we just ignore them. We don't even notice them. Or we'll go around because we don't want to get dirty from their dirt and the people we push aside. And Jesus is saying, to the very least of these, what is your heart and what is your attitude? And the way you treat the very least of these is the way you treat me. Repeat, I am a servant of the Most High God. And when I serve others, I serve Jesus. And the opposite of that is true as well. When I don't notice, when I don't care. The idea that when I'm judging other people and sizing them up or just passing them on by, Jesus is saying that's the same attitude you have towards me. Now, we've all been goats, but Jesus transforms hearts. Jesus changes hearts. And if you're a brand new Christian, you're just learning about God's love and God's grace, and you're excited about moving forward and walking with him, and you grow more to be like Jesus over the time of following him. Some of us have been Christians for a very long time, and does your heart look like Jesus, or does it look like the person you've been for a long, long time? It should be, as we mature in faith, spend more time with Jesus, they should be able to look at you and say, wow, she is always doing good. She is always helping the poor. She's always serving other people. He is always looking to the needs of other people. He's always lifting other people up. That's a follower of Jesus. Because the same way you treat others is the same way that you are treating Jesus. It's hard when we become a follower of Jesus and we have the attitude on the outside, the image on the outside, and we do the right things, but something's wrong with our heart because we really don't care about other people. And we're really selfish. We're really just looking after ourselves, but we're wearing the name of Jesus. And I think that might have a problem when we face Jesus before him. He says, how did you treat the least of these, and how did you treat me? See, when you serve, it changes. Because when I serve others, I'm thinking about them and lifting them up. When you serve more, you take less. It's less about what I have and what I need and what are you giving to me, but it's how do I see the needs of other people. And again, I'm not saying to the point that you knock yourself down, that you treat yourself horribly, that you treat your family bad. You don't do that. But you don't lift yourself up and put other people down. You don't need nearly as much of attention on yourself when you're concerned about the attention of others. You don't need nearly as much recognition. You don't need nearly as much stuff when you're concerned about people who don't have and people who are in need. So how do we serve? How do we serve other people? Just some practical things here. First of all, we need to make sure we see people in need. As you look around, that you can see them. You can see their need, and you see their need for food, their need for shelter, their need for safety, their need for encouragement, their need for a helping hand. You see the needs of the least of these people. And I believe many times we just go down the road and we don't look because we don't want to be bothered. And we just pass on by, but we actually see the people in need. George Washington Carver once said, how far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and strong, because someday in your life you will be all of these. Some of us have been through some really tough times in the past, and that should soften our hearts. That should make us understanding and compassionate of people in need. But for some reason, when we get through a hard time, sometimes we come out bold and strong and say, that's never going to happen to me again. And we can actually become embittered against people who are in the same place where we once were. And pride sets in. We should see people in need, understand how young people are overlooked and older people are overlooked and people who are caught in this category of struggling along. And can we just pause and see people in need and want and desire to help? Another group is people who are cast aside. These are the people that the world does not regard. Think back when you were younger and you were choosing your sports team. You were set up as the captain and all the kids were lined up and they said, okay, pick your team. And you were picking who would be on your team. Who did you pick? You picked the most athletic. You picked the people who could get ahead. You picked the most aggressive, the most talented. And it was one of those horrible things. If you were chosen, it was great. But if you were one of the last ones standing there, what an awful thing. That's the people who are cast aside. The people that nobody wants on their team. It's when you're hiring someone at your work. You get all the resumes in. You start interviewing, and who do you hire? You hire the best, the most skilled, the most accomplished, and that works for your work, but it's sad when that carries over into life. The people who don't make the cuts. We do it at your school. You do it with your friends. Who are the people that you sit around with who want to be, and who are the people that I don't want you to sit at my table because that'll make me look bad. You do it at your work. The people are going to get you ahead at your work and accomplish. You do it with your kids, friends, the people that you want to, if I could hang around them, then that'll give recognition. We do it as moms and dads, what clubs I can be in, how do I get recognized, what neighborhood can I live in, where can I be, how do I get ahead? And it's the people who never make the cut. Those are the ones that are cast aside. The kids. It's the elderly. The people with disabilities. The people who are slow. The people with social issues and discouraged. It's the people that we cast off. We look over to the country of India, and they have this whole caste system of wherever you're born, that's where you're going to be in life, and that's it, period. You're born the poor person, you're the poor person. No matter what you accomplish, you're still in that category. You still live in that neighborhood. You still carry that name. And on this side of the world, we look at that and say, that is horrible. That's awful. We should be able to accomplish and get ahead. And that opportunity is here in America. But sometimes in our heart and our attitudes, we still cast people aside. You've worked so hard to get where you're at. But you look at other people and say, man, I wish they would work. Why don't they get where they need to be? And we look down on them instead of seeing a need and saying, how do we help? What is it that's causing them not to be able to get ahead? The people of Korah are definitely the people that are cast aside. It is the slum of the slum of the slum of the slums. The people that live there are trying to survive, and many of those with leprosy were dropped off by their family because they got the disease, and there's a social stigma, but there's a fear of it, and they literally take in this community, they leave them, and they abandon them to survive. The people that are physically disabled, this is where they're taken, and they're dropped from all the communities around. And the disease, and it's horrible, it's awful, the poverty. We think, why is that way? This huge capital city of Addis Ababa, where there's a lot of wealth, there's a lot of stuff going on, but this is the place where people are sent to. And once they're there, they're ignored, and you look away from them. These are the beggars on the street that we don't want any part of. You think, if you just take care of yourself, but they've been cast aside to such a hard place that someone needs to give them a helping hand. Someone needs to love on them and give them compassion and help them get to where they need to be. And I'm thrilled about the project that we're doing. And I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to come in and help many of these individuals and families get to a new place and get to a place where they can provide. And Harvester's done a lot in the past, but this is a different kind of a project to help people get on their own. And so I pray that you will sacrificially give in a way that makes a difference. And that we can give money, but still our heart for the people here. Who is it in your neighborhood? Maybe who is it in your family? Who is it in your school or in your work that needs to be noticed and reached out to? And one area is just the people who Jesus loves. There were a lot of people following Jesus after he started doing all of his miracles and teachings, and they all wanted to be around him. And they were following, and there was times it says he was exhausted and needed to get away by himself and get some rest. And he would take the boat to the other side of the lake, and he'd get there, and there's all the people are there again. And I think if that was me and probably you, we'd go, oh, can you just give me a break? But we see Jesus over and over, the phrase was he saw the people and he was moved with compassion. Because he saw their needs. He saw their hunger. And every time he continued to minister and to care for them. The least of these. So if Jesus was here, who is it that he would love? Who is it that he would be moved with compassion over? I have no doubt it'd be the people of Korah. I have no doubt it would be you. I have no doubt it would be the people of your neighborhood or your school or your work that need to be loved. And Jesus says, as the way you treat them is the same way you treat me. So if Jesus came in down the aisle and was looking for a place to sit, would you go, oh, yeah, come, move over. I'll come sit by me right here. We would do that with Jesus, wouldn't we? If you saw he was hungry, you'd go, oh, Jesus, let me take you to lunch today. Let me provide for you, or let me give you a ride. You need a place to stay. Come on over, Jesus. If we saw Jesus in need, we would jump, wouldn't we? We say, Jesus, let me help you out. Let me do what I can. He says, what you do for the least of these is what you're doing for me. So about the other person walks in and just looks like they don't know anybody, standing alone. Say, hey, come sit by me. Introduce yourself. What about that person sitting by themselves at the lunch table at school? If Jesus was sitting there, you'd go, hey, oh, Jesus. Can you reach out to them? The person who's being ostracized at work, you reach out to them. your neighborhood? Would you give Jesus a coat to wear on a day like today when it's cold? Sure you would. Do you know someone else that's cold? The way you treat others is the way you treat Jesus. Jesus said, what you do for the least of these, you do for me. And what you do not do for the least of these, you do not do for me. Those are strong words. Those are harsh words. Repeat after me. I am a servant of the Most High God. And when I serve others, I am serving Jesus. Jesus said in Matthew 25:23, he said, well done, good and faithful servant. Again, it's not just because you did something nice one way. It's your heart. It's your character. You're like Jesus. He said, well done, good and faithful servant, the one who loves.